ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, you can hear me okay. All right, so we're looking more. Hello, Fox. Oh, let me grab my coffee. Hold on a minute. I made it. Got to bring it in here. Debbie, you take over. Go ahead. Just pop up on screen and fill us in on what you know. All right, Miss Fox said, okay. I know nothing as usual. Well, nobody knows. It's hot, feels swampy outside. Yeah, we got storms coming here. That's why I wanted to get this over with in case the power went out or something. All right, so what do we know? We know that everything they're saying could be very well possible fake, even the data of the phone in the Nancy Guthrie case. And why do I say that? Well, if they had her phone, then they made it look like she was home. They were communicating back forth from each other, maybe, possibly. We have no idea if she was even in that state at that time. We have no idea if she was even home at that time. So we're going to watch a video, which we always said that on this channel. There is no proof that she was home that day, other than what we are seeing on YouTube, which is the phone data, which they're saying, well, her thing went off at this time, her thing went off at that time. But even if so, if the perpetrators, if this happened before what they're saying, the time and the date, then they had the phone for a long time. They also had Mrs. Guthries for a long time. They also had access to what? Her blood. So all that, we don't know. It's hearsay until anything else. Let's see what Debbie's saying. The earlier video, you can clearly see the sheriff's on almost says that they were there Saturday night. So something is not right. Yeah. Well, they're saying now they didn't even call off the sheriff or whatever. All right, let's watch a little bit of Monk's video because he's trying to say something, and we'll listen because the kid thinks you know this is a police scanner or something of that night that they were directly talking about Mrs. Guthrie or some other case that was going on at the time of all this. And we'll post Monk's channel in chat and in the description. All right, let's keep going. Oh, don't want to do that.
To her channel below. Now, even though she cannot say for certain that what she has uncovered pertains to the Nancy Guthrie case, but if you're anything like me, then we don't believe in coincidences much, right? The time frame and information is a little too on the nose to ignore. So
All right, Debbie, did you see how short Mrs. Nancy Guthrie was compared to Savannah? I mean, she was only 5'4". Well, she probably was shorter than that because as you get older, you shrink. The cartilage in your body starts to deteriorate. What happens? It's you start shrinking. So, all right, January 31st, Nancy travels to local family house. This is January. This is before February. Family drops Nancy off at home, and garage door opens. Garage door closes. Doorbell camera disconnects. Software detects person on camera. That's true. But what I'm saying is she was never there. Whoever planned, staged, whatever, this might have happened a while ago. And what did they do on January 31st? They go to Nancy Guthrie's house to what? To stage. Just like you were saying in the other video month, to possibly stage something, get everything ready, and then they call the police, right? Which which makes it is very possible. Because I talked to some people and they said, well, her face has been up on billboards for a long time. And that's what I thought too. Ooh, it's raining out right now. I didn't even notice that it's raining out. It's starting to rain. Yeah, it is. All right. So when was she missing? Is the real question.
I believe we have some intriguing additions to the timeline of when Nancy, that, my friends, is called the Mike Tyson syndrome. So here we can go back to February 1st. Nancy's church friends, they are gathered, okay, at one of their homes, and they start growing concerned that their good friend Nancy has not arrived. And we can assume they attempted multiple times to reach her before they felt the need to call family, which of course should be Annie and Tommaso. Now, according to news stations like CNN,
All right, there's Tommaso, right? Does he have that face structure in the head and everything? Yeah, yeah, I can see why people, he popped up on the radar. Uh, you know, yeah, I would say so. There's a lot of suspects in this case, which would point to a crew, other people involved, you know, like like an organized thing. Or there was other people involved in this. Whether it was staging, whether it was one person was writing the emails and sending them for the $1 million or the Bitcoin. Another person was in charge of uh, cameras. Another person was in charge, just like the movie Ocean's 11, right? Where there's many people involved in this. Even if it was an inside job, there's still many people involved in this. All right, let's keep going. Debbie says they use a dolly every day. Oh, yeah. Hauling around music equipment and everything like that. Yeah, probably, maybe, possible.
Fox News, even the New York Times, if these are media outlets that you trust, then we have Annie and Tommaso arriving at Nancy's house to check on her a full 56 minutes later at 11:56, which A&T might have a reasonable explanation, but since we don't have it, since Pima County won't release the family statements yet, I feel it's perfectly fine for any of us to find this 56-minute gap a bit problematic. Okay. So there should be numerous missed calls on Nancy's phone, right? From her church friends and from Annie. So Annie and Tommaso, they gain entry to Nancy's house by unknown means, which in these police scanners might actually give us a clue. And once they gain entry, they do not like what they see. Okay. And 7 minutes later at 12:03, it's either Tommaso or Annie that gets on the phone and calls the police. Now, I said that that's according to the likes of CNN or Fox News, etc. I said it that way because on the interview room just a few weeks ago, they said that they received information from a trusted source that suggested that the family were at Nancy.
I see what you're saying, Debbie, that you use a dolly every day. Then you typed, that's not what I said, geez. But Tommaso would also use a dolly. You know, because Monk thinks that it's possible they put her on a dolly and wheeled her out of there, or, you know, that's what he thinks. But I'm thinking maybe possible suitcase, a big suitcase, or possibly, like he's saying, it's possible, a dolly. Yeah. A suitcase on wheels, like a traveling suitcase. Yeah, that's very possible. I've seen what you said,
his house almost immediately after getting the call from those church friends, which makes a lot of sense. You know, to rush over to your loved one's house when you cannot reach them. They're elderly, they could be in danger, they could have just fallen down, right? So the interview room has the family at the house as early as 11 a.m. However, that would make things even more problematic because the police still has the call log at 11:56 a.m. That means Annie and Tommaso were at Nancy's house with no course of action that we know of for the next 50 minutes. When there's blood at the doorstep, when the Nest camera is ripped off its brackets, the back doors and back gates are propped wide open. That should take an elderly walk away completely and immediately off the table. I mean, that's arguable, I guess, but that should cause some type of panic in that first couple of minutes of being on a scene like that. And so the Pima County Sheriff's Department, they arrive at the residence at 12:15. We can easily assume that they take statements, they take notes, right? Also, I would love to know where that Pima County deputy parked on Nancy's property. Hopefully, it was on the street. So at this point in the story, we can start inserting Juanita's police scanner calls in.
Hey, can you check for any transports or hospitals, please?
And I need to show much respect for her spending hours on these calls in order to, cherry pick the ones that are possibly pertaining to the Nancy Guthrie case, right? The ones that made the most sense and occurred at the appropriate times. So the first one, okay, the BOLO, the Be on the Lookout from Tucson PD and fire first begins at 12:23.
I'll be 1060, the missing person as well. Also, I texted everyone that's working a OLN photo of her.
And I looked up code 1060 in Arizona. If you hear that official, what he talks about, it means he's in the vicinity of the area. The code, I guess, what he's saying, hey, I'm in the area for this missing person. There's a photo of her, a bolo getting sent around.
Which is true. However, for Pima County specifically, it goes deeper because different departments, even in the same state, they could use the exact same codes, but for a different reason. So the policeman is saying that he is 1060 in the vicinity and also that he is doing miscellaneous patrol activity. So before this particular officer was sent, this Be on the Lookout, he is just cruising around without any specific duty. He also received a photo,
All right. Now, can it be suspicious that that cop is just in that area doing miscellaneous stuff, driving around, whatever, was he in charge of patrolling that neighborhood? But no matter what the thing is, he's already out there in that vicinity, and he ain't doing nothing but just driving around as usual, as police do on patrol or whatever, watching for anything that bad that happens or anything. So, coincidence? Well, probably. It's, something to crime scene more. Well, Monkey might be right if he pulled in. I mean, we've seen numerous people. They didn't lock it down right away. How did they know there was a homicide when you got no body? How did they know that? Very interesting. And did he pull into the driveway? Well, to maybe um, destroy some footprints, tire tracks. Like if you said, if they did dolly her out, there might be tracks in the driveway because it was crushed gravel. There might be footprints. There might be evidence, but they're saying, well, she went in through the garage and out the garage. Well, that's very possible. If and only if, Monk, she was even home that day, or this even occurred when they say it occurred. Because there is no evidence that she was even home that day. There is no footage other than a phone. And we've seen this in the Gabby Petito case, Monk, where Brian Laundrie had the phone and was communicating with family. And they thought they were talking to her. So if this occurred way before they're saying, they already had her phone. They already had her phone. They were already hacking. They were already doing everything. They had access to the house. They could have came and went numerous times. Why? Because they had her phone. Oh, well, there she is. Her phone's beeping at the house. Numerous times before this, and then the last time to stage this whole thing. Like you're saying, it possibly could be. Oh, you're right, 100%. It could be staged. What do? They take the monitor off. It disconnects. Uh-oh, she disconnected. But really, she's been gone for a while because they had access to everything. All right, let's keep going. Debbie Fox says, who is saying this? Obviously, you are not talking to this guy. Assignment going to my Yeah, go on. Go do your stuff. You go cut your grass. I'm almost done here. Be safe. Put your sunscreen on. All right, let's keep going with this.
Of the bolo, and he texted it out to everyone. However, I gave this a lot of thought, and I've come to the conclusion that it's more troublesome than meets the eye, simply because, well, we're from the future, are we not, in terms of when that case was? And knowing what we know now about the case makes this early response a bit troublesome in a way, okay? And here is why. So this is a be on the lookout, okay, to a 1060 officer with a picture. That in itself tells us that something was conveyed, assessed back at Nancy's house that led the responding officer to believe that this was not a high priority situation, okay? I will get into more detail to make this make sense. That Nancy could have been just a walk away. So as we've explained, a 1060 officer is cruising around without any specific task at the moment, okay? So don't we assume that they have numerous bolos in their computers? And wouldn't Nancy be just the latest to be inserted into a list of missing people? To me, at least, does not sound like a call to action. When the first deputy arrived, okay, at 12:15, we must remember that he is not a detective. This is not the sheriff. Okay. This is a patrolman that was in the vicinity. Do we assume that he is walking around the property bagging evidence? Right? No, not at all. All he is looking for when he makes it to the scene is to find whoever made that 911 call. So I would picture Annie and Tommaso possibly waiting outside.
All right, there's Tommaso. There's Tommaso. Oh, I think Debbie went to go cut grass. Tommaso's face and Annie's face. Very interesting. But here's what I'm saying, Monk, is that there is no evidence of Mrs. Guthrie. Now, here, and he hit a point. I wanted to prove, or not prove, point out something. That the police officer shows up there. These people have access to the house because they're the caregivers of the house, of Nancy and the property, right? Because they are in charge of Nancy. So they have access to the house at any time. They have access to the house at any time, right? So hold on a minute, folks. All right, wasn't that important. They didn't leave a message. All right, so what I'm saying is they're in charge of everything. If something would to happen to, hold on a minute, folks. I don't know. He keeps calling me. It ain't nobody important. Someone wireless or something. I don't know. But let's get back to this point. They're not home, right? Or they have access to the house. All right. They have access to the phone. They have access to the heart monitor. They have access to everything. All right. So people are saying, well, she was home that. No, she was not home. Because these people had access to the phones. Well, they dropped her off and the phone's on it. Well, sure, the phone's there. They dropped her off. Right? They drop her off. They drop everything off. What do? The monitor's gone. It disconnected from the house phone or whatever. The phone's shut off. The cameras get disconnected. Sure. Because we don't know what time it is when this really occurred. We're going off phone data, which, well, they already had access to all the codes, everything, because they were the caregivers of Nancy Guthrie. So it's very well possible. I understand what you're saying. Here's the thing. The police show up, and if Nancy and Tommaso are there because they made the call, who made the call that she was missing? They did. The family. Maybe other people have been calling. She didn't make his hair. She didn't do this. All part, maybe possibly, of a diversion. We're not sure. Let's keep going with this.
Maybe looking around when the deputy pulled up. The only thing the officer can do at this point is, how should I say, feed off their energy, okay? Observe their behavior and the scene and listen to the people that are filling him in on what is going on, okay? I feel that's a fair deduction, okay? So the deputy is given a picture of Nancy and he calls in, that bolo to all the 1060s. Okay, that bit of information that Juanita found actually helped us understand the mood early on. There was no sense of urgency in the beginning of this. Are we to assume that A&T are not taking this deputy to the blood on the front porch, showing him the missing doorbell? And what about the propped gates? Am I out of pocket to assume that if he saw that,
Now, what does this look like to me? Well, she was doing it. This looks like this blood is dried, coagulated. So here's what I'm saying. The police show up there and they're telling them, well, maybe she just walked away somewhere. Maybe there was no urgency, right? Because really the cop was doing his job. You got no body. Was there blood inside the house that made them think this was a homicide or something? Well, what does that look like to me? It looks like blood that's already been dried, droplets. You know, how long? I don't know. I'm no professional. I'm no professional. And we don't know at this time who did this. The perp. Her blood might be mixed in there. That's true. Well, the perp might have been sick, coughing up blood. We're not sure. There was two kinds of blood there. So I don't know. That's pretty interesting. Let's keep going.
he wouldn't be just calling in a bolo. He would be calling in for a detective and the homicide unit on the spot. Now, because we're in the future, we know that eventually the search and rescue team would be on the scene, as indicated by Nanos in that long lost interview, but he never mentions when they were actually utilized. But with the police scanners, we get an idea that it was quite some time, because even 15 minutes later at 12:30, they're still wondering if they should get search and rescue involved.
My name is Robert Cross, President CEO of Tina's Burritos. Tina.
After you've checked the property thoroughly, let me know if you want to get search and rescue involved.
And this brings us right back that the early read of this situation was, for some reason, not very dire. Now, I will say to Juanita's point, okay, we don't know 100% that this is concerning Nancy Guthrie. It's just a very convenient time frame. I feel that's hard to ignore. So this next call is simultaneous with that 12:31 that we just heard, and it should be about the available 1060 officers in the vicinity, and they are going to be working together on this latest bolo.
17. If you want to stick to the neighborhoods northwest, 842, you can take the southwest, and I'll stay on the east portion on Campbell neighborhood.
Now we can see here that Juanita placed inaudible because she couldn't make out if it was Campbell, but I feel it has to be Campbell, as that's the big streets if you are leaving Nancy's neighborhood. This call, I believe, is definitely in the vicinity and most likely pertaining to Nancy Guthrie. And if you've been following closely, then you know that when the night falls and Sheriff Nanos comes out and gives that long lost interview, this whole thing just gets even more bizarre. The sheriff that inserts himself instead of a PIO, which I learned from the interview room, is a public informations officer. If my memory doesn't fail me, that's what Karen was. So she was pretty appalled that the sheriff would take over what a PIO was designed to do.
Well, who knows? He might have tried to get his 15 minutes of fame, being that the police and everybody was watching him before the Nancy Guthrie case, which is pretty crazy, but true. So So what do you got? You got the sheriff that shows up there, the officer. He's walking around. He don't see Bud. He does he go in the house? It's obvious. Somebody must have showed up there. Whoever called, right? But no, nobody's there. He don't take it as it's a murder. That's that is suspicious, because if this was a huge thing, then I could see how they're not too concerned that she's dead. You know?
So here's just a little clip of Nanos being Johnny on the spot.
I don't need to tell you, this is very concerning to us. You don't typically get the sheriff out at a scene like this, but it's very concerning. We're learning from the house, and so we'll just continue.
Now, guys, did you see how self-satisfied and happy he looked when he said, you don't typically get the sheriff out for something like this? Like, it just feels like he's on some type of high horse being the sheriff. So he will go on to say that homicide is out there right now and that he has grave concerns processing the house. And in this same interview, suggests that she could have wandered off.
Maybe you ran into her. Maybe she wandered off and you ran into her. If you've seen her or anybody like her, call us.
So now we're going to move to a point where we can start to sense that the situation, okay, after the deputy Shirley did their walk around, right? They're getting a sense of urgency now.
Try not to disturb any of the items in the house. We're getting a hold of a scent tracking dog, so try to stay away from the blood outside and anything inside the house that could hold a scent. Copy.
Which I will argue needed to have happened a half hour ago from this point. So a tracking dog is being sent out. And according to...
Aha, the tracking dog. Right? So the first guy that shows up should have been reporting all this, but he don't. Right? So Nana shows up there, and he's saying that homicide's on it. So they must think that there's a homicide or something. Right? That's what he's saying. If that's what Monk is saying, that Nanos is saying he's competent, that homicide's on it and everything. But how do they know it's a homicide when he says she might have walked away? If anyone's seen her walk, she might have walked away. But in the same breath, they're saying this is an 84-year-old woman and she could barely walk. She can't walk 50 feet without a walker or whatever. And that's interesting too.
Juanita, this blue shirt to Nancy, this was used for that scent dog. He is basically telling the deputies on the scene not to touch anything. Stay away from the blood outside. If this is not the Nancy Guthrie case, then what is going on in Pima County, right? Is this phone call from the homicide unit making sure that the scene is protected before they could arrive?
Can we start checking any adjacent properties to see if anyone's got cameras that might be facing this way? Family here does not have access to the cameras on the property.
This call is roughly the same time as the previous call. And is it just me? Or does that not sound suspiciously like Nanos?
Cameras that might be facing this way. Family here does not have access to the cameras on the property.
Raspy voice and that manner of speaking. So the interesting thing he says here is that family can't access the cameras. Meaning, if this is pertaining to the Nancy Guthrie case, the best caretakers are saying that they didn't have the Nest app installed in their phones. Wouldn't all family members want this app if just to check on Nancy now and again for peace of mind.
Keenan's side, they were able to get into the phone. Also, Keen is here.
Now, Juanita placed inaudible right here, but I clearly heard what was said. Now, before I lead you down any type of path, I'm going to play it for you 3.
You don't need to, kid. The family had access to the phone. That's what they said. The family got access into the phone, and the canine was there. I agree with you. So they did have access to the phone. They did know the codes.
More times, figure it out yourselves, and let's see if you hear what I hear.
Keenan's side. Keenan's side. Keenan's side.
I think I distinctly heard key inside, right? Right. It sounds like dispatch said something before that. The man responded, key inside. Now, if we're hearing this correctly, does that mean the question dispatch asked was, how did they get in the house? And the response was, A&T used a key to get inside. So if that's the case,
built for your casework, grounded in the record. That's Rev.
the front door, okay? Because the back doors are already propped open. I don't think you need a key anymore. But that would also mean that they would see the front porch has blood all over it. How do you remain calm?
Yeah. So they had the key. Someone showed up from the family to have the key to get into the house. But here's the thing. Why didn't they just go? Here's the thing. It's possible they locked the doors before they left. Even if they went in that way, they locked it before they left. And everyone is saying, well, they went out the garage. Very possible. But if the police showed up there and the back door was already open and they did their jobs properly, they would have, had gloves on. They would have turned the handle. Oh, the door's open. Right? The back door was never locked. Right? Now, that also might have been a diversion where the front door was locked, but the back door was unlocked and they left through the garage. Well, to make it appear, someone came in the back door because it was unlocked.
At all. After seeing something like that on the front porch of your loved one, how is this just a 1060 bolo with everything they've seen? Now, I get that Annie may be shy, but your mom's house looks like an apparent abduction and maybe a murder scene, right? There's no better time to break out of your shell to find your mom, right? Or am I being too hard on her? I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, Tommaso's there too, right? His deep thinking should have led him down a very dark assumption as well. So what is this reaction to this first responding deputy? I can't make sense of it. So the next thing is that they were able to get into the phone, which sounds to me more or less like A&T could get into Nancy's phone, right? Either it be a pin or maybe she just didn't have a pin installed at all. Now, I'm going to say this very clearly and carefully at the same time. And again, that the Nest camera saw a lot of activity that night. It captured an entire crotch holster guy on the front porch. Where are all the events that were created by the Nest camera? From all the cameras from around Nancy's home, because I can tell you this, those events with thumbnails were created. Are the police just holding that as a secret? But then why release an entire video just to hold on to some thumbnails from the events of that night?
Well, now you're catching on, kid. Now you're catching on. Why? Because there was more than one camera there. Why are we not, which I've been posting on all these things, why are we not seeing evidence that Mrs. Guthrie that day was in her house, left her house, and returned to her house? And then they said, well, this is the kid. This is, we know something because she came home and here's the evidence. We have no proof that that little lady was even home that day. We have no proof that she was even in town that day or even in that state. Because if this already happened before the police were contacted or anybody, they already had time. They had the phone, they had the heart monitor, they had numerous things that they themselves could have went there through the garage numerous times before this, and it would show that Mrs. Guthrie was there. The heart monitor would be still pumping, whatever. In reality, they had control of Mrs. Guthrie. They had control of her body. They had control of her phone, her heart monitor, numerous things. So even though at that time she wasn't dead or deceased or missing when she really was, like held hostage, they had control of this little old lady the whole time. Now, is this all staged because something might have happened to Mrs. Guthrie and she did wander away? And there's blood there or whatever, or someone did come in and take her, kidnap her. Well, who would be in charge? You have to look at what happened. An agency from the elder committee that are investigators of elder abuse came to the site and left a card. Right? You have to look at numerous things. Now, if something bad did happen to Mrs. Guthrie that could have been prevented, who would get the blame for all this? Well, the people that are in charge of her, the people that are her well, let's say handlers or caregivers, which was her family. So there, what? Something bad happened to her. She fell. You guys should have been there, but you weren't. You should have had you should, but you weren't. Oh my God. And then they create this to make it look like something other. They hire people to come in, do something, and you want to, you never hire anybody in state in your own town to do this. You hire somebody outside of your state, outside of your regular family ring to do something like this. And they stage the whole thing. Very well possible. I can't take it off of the table right now. I can't take it off of the table.
This part to me has never made any sense. The only thing I could come up with is that someone got into that phone and manually deleted it. And I'm still waiting for someone with a plausible solution to this riddle. I could also be persuaded into believing that these thumbnails are so damning that the police are not ready just yet. Now, the end of this call, it said Kane is here, which Juanita figured that it possibly meant her walking cane, which is a great assumption, considering that we have seen pictures of Nancy using a cane. The first thing...
Well, that might be true. Either when they mention cane, it's her walking cane, or they said that they had a police dog coming out. Monk, remember that? You played it a little while ago. So cane might be code for the police as canine. The dog sniffing dogs and everything. Too bad Debbie wasn't here. Debbie would be able to tell us about the dog sniffing.
That popped into my mind, however, was that K9 arrived. Okay, since they were talking about scent dogs earlier, I just thought maybe Kane was some type of police speak for canine, but that's just me, and it's neither here nor there.
Negative Jane Doe's on all the local ERs and hospitals. 10-4, thank you.
So no Nancy, at all the local ERs and hospitals. And so the first thing that popped into most of our heads just now, I would assume, is did all the local hospitals get 3 calls that day? So a fun question. How did Savannah tell us that she doesn't trust Annie without saying she doesn't trust?
New guy we just hired.
Really?
Check out his resume. Been driving forklift longer than you've been alive.
Mike Pallet?
By saying she will call the hospitals as well after Annie said that she had already called all the hospitals. So now, allegedly, we find out that all the hospitals were called by the police as well.
And I wrote down here, this doesn't match Annie's story about calling all the hospitals unless she pretended that they are the them. Because I'm also guessing that by this point, Savannah still had not been called yet. So mind you, all this is happening, and yet Savannah, if we listen back to when she says that she got home in the evening, at this point, it doesn't, I don't believe that Savannah knew that all this was happening at her mom's house.
Juanita makes a good point here. Did Annie simply take credit for all the hospitals being called? Because I feel that she would be in the loop if the deputy is doing this. Okay, he would tell her, okay, next we're going to call all the hospitals. And I'm thinking this had to have been done in short order, shortly after the deputy first arrived. Something just doesn't math here unless they all called, okay? Or Annie did just tell a little white lie to Savannah. So what are the important things to take away from these early police scanners that Juanita painstakingly handpicked for us? Okay, so if they all pertain to the Nancy Guthrie case, which I trust that they do, then I find it concerning that this was treated as a possible walk away right from the start. Okay, all the way to the evening when Nanos gave that first interview.
Maybe you ran into her. Maybe she wandered off and you ran into her. If you've seen her or anybody like her, call us.
The lack of urgency from the very start from the family is puzzling, because any family, put yourself in Annie and Tommaso's shoes, right? Wouldn't you be very concerned about the scene that you walk into? Okay, I will say A&T would have every right to be completely hysterical at the scene they found. And yet, it didn't seem that they could convey this to the responding deputy. Or was this deputy so thick-headed that he just refused to escalate it? How frantic the family was.
Well, Monkey might be right. The deputy that showed up there, the officer that responded to the first call, might have been thick-headed. Most police officers are thick-headed. You can't tell them anything. And did he have the right to think something else, maybe? Was this responding officer using his training, and the reason he didn't sound or act like it was something very traumatic was maybe he had an instinct or something that this was something other than what it was, right? They pull up, they go. Here's the thing, we have no idea, because we've seen no footage in the house. If there was a struggle, there would be evidence of it. There would be evidence of the struggling inside the house. There might be blood inside the house. There might not be, right? Because maybe she was injured, taking her out of there, and the blood, possibly that's when the injury occurred or whatever. See, we don't know what's inside that house. We have no idea what they found in the house. We have no idea if there's blood in the bedroom because obviously they're saying, well, she went home and went to bed. All right, well, if she went home and went to bed, then there would be evidence of that, of her, uh, in her nightgown and all that. But they're not. They're seeing a blue shirt. Now, who threw that blue shirt there? Because when dawn broke, was that blue shirt there? Was that blue shirt there? Where did that blue shirt come from? Did it come from inside the house? Did it come from the family? Where did that blue shirt come from? Is my question. Because there's evidence and footage that we're seeing of the house not contained and taped off by authorities. And we're not seeing a blue shirt. So where did that blue shirt come from? If they're claiming it's Nancy Guthries. And they said, well, that's for the dogs to sniff or whatever, but why did they lay it down there and say, well, this was the blue shirt? When we see footage of people driving there that day and pulling in the driveway, leaving it, but we're not seeing a blue shirt on the rocks on the entryway. Well, where did it come from? It's like the glove at Idaho 4 that was found outside by the garbage can. Where'd that come from? Everyone was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Where'd that come from?
Which do you think sounds more plausible? Then there is Annie possibly lying to Savannah about being the one to call all the hospitals. Okay. That might just be a family dynamic thing. Okay. I mean, Annie was tasked as the caretaker. So that's something I guess her siblings would expect her to do. There is no possible way that the deputy, even, but definitely the detectives, the homicide unit, aren't aware that there are missing events on Nancy's phone, because there is the possibility that they are not sharing it with us. Okay. But if they have not figured out that there are missing events on her phone, that will always be an issue until it's explained by the police somehow. So my name is Monks. Once again, go check out Juanita Arame's channel. Okay? Now go protect the ones that you love and love the ones that protect you.
All right, there you go, folks. Now, folks, we got bad weather coming in today, so be safe. And I just wanted to review that because I'm trying to tell people, even though they're putting out this data, this timeline, calls where these people are saying, well, it's dispatch. It might not be dispatch. These people are so good, they can make it sound like it's dispatch, but is actually the bad guys. They can interrupt police lines if they have certain devices where it makes it sound like them. If they have a radio that's connected to the police or whatever, right? They can make it sound like they're calling. They're actually the police, and they're calling, but they're really not calling. They're trying to cover up something, but they're acting as police. But these, and they might be police. There might have been police involved in this as a cover up, but they were being used from someone else. If it was a one-man job, could somebody do this? Yes, but you would need something, maybe. Whether this guy was strong enough to carry her out and place her in a vehicle or truck or whatever van, depending whether he had a device, whether, like Monk was saying, a dolly or a giant traveling suitcase where he rolled her out into the vehicle. Maybe he might already had the garage door opener. right? If this was all staged and she was already gone, then they had access to everything: cameras, keys, phone, heart monitor, vehicle. They even probably had access to her vehicle. You know, oh, here she is. Here's little Miss Guthrie getting in her car and she's driving away. But it really ain't Nancy Guthrie. It's someone else using her car to make it appear that she was home and she in her car. Now they said that they did find a dent on the bumper of the car. Now I don't know if that's true or not, but if they had access to everything, if this happened before what they're saying, before the police calls, if they're even real police calls or all made up, and it sounds like it's the police. So yeah, all right, folks. I posted Monk's channel. Go check his channel out. Check out Miss ATS News channel, crime fighter, reporting numerous things on ATS News channel. Check out Miss ATS News channel. Miss ATS News, if you want to post your channel, you can. Numerous things could be going on right now. So very suspicious. Yeah, one man thing. Well, yeah, one man could do a lot if he's got time. If one man has time and access to everything, could one man kidnap her, take her to a place, return with the phone, even return maybe with her vehicle, and it looks like Mrs. Guthrie's coming home, but she really ain't, right? He locks everything up, stages something on the computer, and then leaves. Yeah. Yeah, if he's got enough time and access to everything, then very well may be one man. And it very well may be many involved. All right, folks, there you go. We'll be back with more of the Nancy Guthrie case and numerous cases. Now, I want you to keep an eye on the weather because we got storms coming in today, later today. Chances of tornadoes, they're saying, and damaging winds. So be safe. God bless. And I will be back with more content.